Our next relationship sin is invalidation. Invalidation is one of the more subtle of the relationship sins, but it's probably the most universal of all of them. A group of researchers at the University of Denver put together a program called CPREP, the Christian Prevention and Relationship Enhancement Program. And in that program, they identify 4 traits that they have discovered through research are present in almost all failed relationships. Number 2 are strong predictors of divorce. Number 3 are often learned in the home of origin. And number 4 tend to neutralize all of the good in any given relationship. Those 4 traits are escalation, invalidation, negative interpretation, and withdrawal. We're going to be addressing invalidation. Often with these relationship problems, there is what we might call comorbidity. There's more than one, and they kind of tend to feed off one another. For instance, if someone is in the habit of invalidating people, that can trigger the other person to escalate and get angry because they feel shut down. Let me give you some examples of invalidation. It's very subtle, but just let me give you some broad categories and some specific example in each category. For instance, ordering. Smile, be happy, cheer up, get over it, grow up. What about just ordering people to look different than they look? Don't look so sad. Don't look so smug. What about isolating? You're the only one who feels that way. It doesn't bother anyone else, you know. What about minimizing your feelings? You must be kidding. You can't be serious. Seriously? What about using reason? There's no reason for you to feel that way. Or you're not being rational. Or what about judging and labeling? You're a crybaby. You're too sensitive. You are overreacting. What about telling people how they should act or how they should feel? You should be excited. You should be happy. You shouldn't complain. You shouldn't be unhappy. What about sarcasm and mocking? Oh, you poor thing. Did I hurt your little feelings? What about guilt trips? Don't you ever think of anyone but yourself? What about my feelings? What about philosophizing or cliches? Time heals all wounds. Every cloud has a silver lining. There's a reason for everything. Or what about religionizing? I'll pray for you. God will help you. And this type of thing. It's only designed to shut the person down, not to really try to minister to them. I was presenting this in a public forum and a lady raised her hand and she said, "You've just taken away everything that I ever say. I'm going to have to sit quietly for the rest of my life." And I realized in that moment that it really is only invalidation. Many of these things are actually good things to say at certain points, but it becomes invalidation when you fail to first listen carefully and empathize with the person. And so the replacement for invalidation is good listening. Active, empathic listening is the replacement for invalidation. James chapter 1 and verse 19 says, "Let every man be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath." Did you ever notice that we are exactly the opposite? We are quick to speak and slow to hear and quick to wrath. And it's no accident that our slowness to hear ultimately leads to escalation. Active listening is so effective that the FBI has formulated a plan called the Behavioral Change Stairway Model that is used in crisis negotiation with people holding people hostage and situations like that. So here's the stairway model. It begins with, you guessed it, active listening. Then on the foundation of that active listening comes empathy. And then on the foundation of that empathy comes rapport that you build with the person. And then on that rapport, you can build influence. And then finally, you can ask for a behavior change. When the FBI uses this process that begins with active listening, it can make a life or death difference for people. And sometimes we find our relationships to be kind of hostage situations. And it can make a life or death difference how we deal with them. Some of the skills involved in active listening are, for instance, paraphrasing. Someone is saying, "Oh, this person insults me purposefully and speaks to me in a very cruel way in order to destroy my confidence. And you might paraphrase that by saying, you mean they're emotionally abusive? Another active listening technique is summarizing, listening to what a person says and then saying, now wait a minute, let me make sure I got you right, and giving them a big picture feedback of what they just told you. Another aspect of active listening is asking open-ended questions. Open-ended questions are simply questions that can't be answered with a yes or a no. So you would begin the question with one of 4 words: what, where, when, and how. When you are trying to engage in active listening, do not use questions that begin with why, because it's too easy for those types of questions to come off as an accusation. So use these open-ended questions that begin with what, where, when, and how to give people an opportunity to express themselves and to process whatever it is that they're dealing with. Another good active listening technique is using I statements, simply saying to a person, you know, when you tell me about this person insulting you and treating you so cruelly, I feel so disturbed and I feel so much compassion for you, and I also feel some anger at them. That can help focus the conversation. You know, when it all comes down, most of us really don't want to be agreed with necessarily. We just want to be understood. And part of conveying that understanding is good, solid, active, empathic listening. Try it. You'll see the benefit.